pleased to welcome Harvard Business School Professor Ananth Raman. Ananth is actually my teacher at the HBS Advanced Management Program. I'm Carrie Yu, Senior Advisor of PricewaterhouseCoopers and Chairman of Hang Yan Chain Store and Education Foundation. Ananth have also invited me to attend the Core Research Conference, which presentations have been made by a number of professors worldwide on retail operations. Today, Ananth is going to share with you his favorite topic, and that is inventory, supply chain, and operations. Ananth, so this is your favorite topic. So share with us some of the quick wins for retailers.
Yeah, well, thank you, Carrie. It is a little, maybe not a little boring to be introduced as somebody who's obsessed with inventory, but it is correct that I, as a person interested in retail operations, I do pay a lot of attention to inventory because retailers need to have the right product in the right quantity available at the right store at the right time at the right price, because it's the availability of the product that lets them sell the product and make money. On the other hand, both having too little as well as having too much inventory can be very, very expensive. And so the challenge for retailers often is, how do you make sure that you have just the right amount of product available at different locations? Now, if you kind of think about this problem at the macro level, first of all, there's savvy investors who invest in retail stocks have always been concerned, have always paid attention to inventory.
So the analysts care about the inventory levels and the stock turns.
Absolutely, and smart investors have always recognized that inventory can be the canary in the coal mine, that rising inventory levels can often predict future earnings surprises, for example. In our own research, in the academic research that you cited, we've had research over the last 10 or 15 years, but done by some of my students, some of their students, where we show that retailers who have more productive inventory do outperform over the long term those that do not have productive inventory. So inventory is a very, very useful indicator of how a retailer will perform in the future. Now, what also is true is, if you look at how's this problem becoming, is it becoming easier or more difficult over time? And the evidence is that the industry is struggling with this problem. Even now, and increasingly so. If you go back to like 1970, markdowns in department stores were only 7% of sales. But then it has steadily grown since then. And there are numerous reasons why that happens. One, consumers have become more fickle. Trends come and go very quickly today in a hyper-connected world. Product variety has grown exponentially, and product life cycles have become shorter.
So too many SKUs.
Absolutely, a lot of SKUs, and many years ago, if we had this meeting 50 years ago, all of us would be wearing white shirts. Today, you look at the market share for white shirts has declined, the market share for white sheets has declined, the market share for black cars has declined, but we've got tremendous growth in variety and shorter life cycles, which has made it more challenging for retailers to ensure that they have the right product in the right time at the right place. Right?
So how can we avoid the stockouts, which is a big issue everywhere, in China in particular, losing the profits?
Right, it's a very good question, because I often get called by retailers who say, I have an inventory problem. And in 100% of those cases, when a retailer says they have an inventory problem, what they mean is they have too much inventory. And in every case, without going to the retailer, I can tell them, while the excess inventory is expensive, the inadequate inventory is killing them. And they go, oh no, I don't have any inadequate inventory. But you can bet your life that when you have too much inventory of some products, you also likely end up with inadequate inventory of many other products. the levers available to a retailer to do something about this problem is actually quite limited. So one actually goes back to our cliche that retail is detail, right? So let's take an example, just to highlight, because this problem needs to be addressed at the store SKU level. Now that's easier.
Store SKU, that's a lot.
Yes, and that's easier said than done. Exactly. Consider even a medium-sized retailer, maybe a retailer with 1,000 stores, and maybe with 30,000 SKUs per store. All right. So that might not be a hypermarket. It might be more like a supermarket, multiplied by 1,000 stores. Now you're talking about 30,000 SKUs times 1,000 stores. You end up with 30 million store SKU combinations. And for each of these store SKU combinations, you need to understand the demand pattern. You need to understand seasonality and trend. You need to forecast demand based on that. And then you need to figure out what the optimal level of inventory is.
But that is tough because a lot of retailers will not have this sophisticated tool to do that. Are there any quick wins?
Yes. Well, this is definitely a quick win. And it depends on how advanced you are on this front. If right now you're not even planning at the store SKU level, you can have a huge amount of progress just by looking at data at the store SKU level and deciding what to stock. Now, if you're already doing that, but maybe you're not, you just don't have the ability to figure out seasonality at the store SKU level, well, that could be an enhancement. And obviously there are tools available, there are statistical tools available, there are service providers available, and I don't want to take this forum to identify one or more of them. But anybody can do research on it and find ways in which they can make progress. So there is no way you can tackle this problem at such a detailed level without technology. Technology can be a huge asset over here. Look, as human beings, we don't have the bandwidth to look at optimizing at the store SKU level. We don't have the ability, and honestly, it wouldn't be fun to do. It would be grunt work, whereas a computer can do it, doesn't complain about grunt work, and when a computer does it, it does it for a fraction of a penny. Human beings are much more expensive. So one approach, one way to tackle this problem is to attack it at the detail level. Don't just think you've got one retail concept. You've really got 30 million stocking points that need to be planned every week or every 3 days or every month or whatever the right rhythm of your business is. So there is another theme that I'd like to talk about. And this is the theme about the relationship between retailers and their suppliers. And very often, the relationship between a retailer and a supplier can be characterized as adversarial. It's not really a cooperative partnership.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. And retailers struggle with it because it's often a negotiation. But I think retailers and their suppliers need to understand that they can keep fighting over how to split the pie, but there is a huge opportunity to make the pie even bigger. So, there is an old historical anecdote from a few decades ago. I think it was maybe the 1970s. There was a chain that was becoming bigger and more important to the United States. It was called Walmart. And Procter & Gamble was selling an increasing amount of Pampers, diapers, through Walmart. But on every packet of Pampers that was being sold at Walmart, Procter & Gamble was losing money, and Walmart was losing money.
So it's lose-lose.
It was lose-lose, and it was just not desirable. Now they could sit and argue like dogs about who should lose more money, but net, both were losing money. And instead now they said, look, but if we put our heads together and work together, first of all, both of us should be making money. Now, how we split the pie, we could still quibble over that. And look, there should be some quibbling about it. I mean, that's essential to negotiation. But the more important, but there was a big opportunity that they were otherwise leaving on the table. So there is a lot of opportunity for retailers and their suppliers to sit together and say, look, if we were to work together, how big can this opportunity be?
Yeah, so that applies to brick and mortar and online retailer.
Absolutely.
With the suppliers.
Absolutely, it applies to everybody, you know, and technology by itself is, if you're not working together with your supplier, then technology is not going to solve the underlying problem. The root cause is the adversarial relationship.
That's a great point.
Retailers also have tremendous opportunity to make their supply chains more responsive. And when you make your supply chain more responsive, it enhances your ability to match supply with uncertain demand. This is particularly true for fashion products, which tend to have short life cycles, which have difficult to predict demand, but which tend to have high gross margins and high stockouts. The opportunity in many of these products is to read the signals from the market and be able to respond quickly to these signals. An example of a company, well, we could take a couple of examples of companies that have done this very well. So if you take Zara, Zara can respond to signals from the market in 2 weeks. They can replenish a product in 2 weeks. They can go from creating a product to getting it in the store in around 4 weeks. Now that is really remarkable. It is amazing. And if you can do something like that, it means you don't have to be very good at demand forecasting. You don't have to be very good at demand forecasting because the consumer reveals to you and then you produce accordingly.
So what's the key? Is the supply chain?
Yes, it is the supply chain. And I think the biggest barrier to making the supply chain more responsive is because is managerial thought. I mean, people often, there is often a trade-off between responsiveness and let's call it physical efficiency. So managers very often have a problem if the container is not full.
Yeah.
Or if the factory is not working at 100%, or if the bill for air freight goes up in a particular season. But these are all things that responsive supply chains do. They will deliberately keep their factory idle because if demand turns out to be higher than expected, they can produce more quickly.
Right.
If they can, and then they can ship it by plane rather than by boat, and they will not wait for the container to fill up.
Right.
It goes back to this issue that you raised a few minutes ago, Kerry, which is the cost of air freight is often visible, but the cost associated with lost sales from not having inventory is not visible. So we tend to manage those costs that become more visible. All right.
Yeah. So that is so what you are saying is that responsiveness is priority. Doesn't mean that optimization is a cost optimization is not important,
yes.
But then it has to put in perspective.
Exactly, exactly. And for certain products, such as fashion products, responsiveness is more important than physical efficiency. Now, if you're making white shirts or white t-shirts or black socks, these products look more like treasury bonds, and physical efficiency is extremely important over there.
What about grocery?
Yes, and
grocery items?
It may be a split. So in grocery items, if you look at new products, for example, they tend to resemble fashion products. Very unpredictable demand. If you get it right, you can have a winner on your hands. If you get it wrong, then inventory can sit and rot on your shelf. Exactly. Promotions often end up looking like fashion items as well. So there also you benefit a lot from responsiveness. But the more run-of-the-mill, the rest of the time, grocery looks more, it should be built for physical efficiency, because at the rest of the time it's a low-margin, predictable business. So, you know, if you think about it overall, you know, the retailers try to have the right product in the right place at the right time, you know, in the right quantity. But having too much or too little can be pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And as with everything else in retail, it comes down to getting the details right.
Absolutely.
And also, and in today's world, technology can help you do that. That is a great way to get some quick wins from technology. This is not the kind of big, grand idea that, that will get written up in the newspapers, but it will make a lot of money for you.
Yes, thank you, Ananth. So basically, there are quick wins for large retailer as well as for smaller retailers, and the key is to focus on inventories, because whether it's too much or too little, it costs. It costs the company.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for the insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.